Excellent. All right. My name is Darlise Calix. I'm the developer marketing manager here at Devpost. I'm so excited for today's session. I'll let our panelists introduce themselves in a second here, but today, basically, why we're all here today is a sort of live project review. Very new here at Devpost. We'll kind of go into the judging criteria. We'll see how to make sure your project is hitting its marks, getting its points for this upcoming, or this current actually, ARM Create hackathon. So I'll let our panelists from the ARM team kind of introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of jump into it. How this will go, just briefly. One, you can totally talk in the chat, so make sure you're able to do so just by at least telling me hi in the chat. Let me know where you're even coming in from. I'm in Miami, Florida. It is super hot, which I love because apparently in some other parts of the US, it is kind of chilly and I don't like the cold. So really feeling summer. So let me know that you're good to talk in the chat. We'll go over the judging criteria and then we'll get into some sort of live project reviews. And so if you are curious about if your project is hitting the mark, what we'll kind of do, you can raise your hand and we'll do a queue, essentially. Again, this is new, so we'll see how this goes. But we'll do a queue and we'll kind of go over the project and see like what are we missing? How do we optimize? And how do we get as many points as possible for this hackathon? So that's kind of how it'll go. So we'll see how it goes. All right, I'll pass it off to the ARM team.
Hello, everybody. My name is Avin Zarlez, pronoun she, her. I'm part of the ARM developer evangelism team. The whole team is here today. I've been at ARM now about a year and a half. I've had a very unique career in the tech industry. I ran a game studio at one point. I had a bunch of different roles at Microsoft. I worked there for like 11 years, but we don't need to go into my history there. Main thing is that I've had a lot of experience mostly in mobile games and in cloud themes specifically, and really looking forward to talk with you about your projects today.
I can go next. I'm Gabriel Peterson. I am on Avon and Michael's team. I've been at ARM for it's coming up on 4 years now, and I have a background in like application development and internal tooling and plugins and that kind of thing. And I am in San Diego at the moment, where it is also very hot, where I have two fans pointed at me at the moment just to keep cool enough to not be sweating on this live stream.
All right. And I'm Michael Hall. I round out the team with Avon and Gabe. I am an open source person. I've been working with open source code since like 1999 and SourceForge, if anybody's old enough to have ever used SourceForge. Worked for Canonical on the Ubuntu project for a long time, a number of other open source companies since then. And I am in Western North Carolina, where it was nice and cool this morning, but it is rapidly warming up.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. 1999, I was three, so no, unfamiliar, but I hope there are some other people who are familiar in the chat. So we'll get into, let's talk about the judging criteria, what we all need to make sure that we're covering. I'm going to share my screen actually, so we'll cover that first. And Avon, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so just for the ARM Create AI Optimization Challenge. What we're looking for here is we want you as a developer to do something interesting optimizing for an ARM platform. Not like hackathons we've run before where it's just making something for an ARM platform, but how can you get the most out of your AI using an ARM chip? And I think that our criteria can be maybe a little confusing in the sense that we're very vague about that. But that was very intentional on our part because we wanted to see the creativity of the community on what exactly that means, right? We didn't want to say like you have to, show us a performance metric and then reduce latency by this percentage and the biggest percentage wins. We want you to kind of come up with what optimization might mean for you and what that could be interesting for the whole ARM community, whether it's a tool that is helping other people optimize, whether it's a specific optimization you did for a specific model on a specific platform, whatever it's some type of thing that integrates into an SDK or a system or open source project. And so when we made this dredging criteria, we wanted to reflect the openness that we have for a bunch of different types of projects that people could submit to this, while also weighing them a bit more towards what we think matters most. So as you can see, they're kind of broken down by points, and the number one most points that are going to count towards is your technical implementation, right? Everything else is important, it matters, but at the end of the day, did you actually do something technically that was really interesting? Is this a sound engineering approach? You know, we're making sure that you don't fake any results. I will say if there's any point in your code where you have like fake optimizations, hard, returns of numbers and things, um, I would absolutely say be very careful about doing that. I won't say that you can't have that, but especially if that's in the areas that you're pitching where your optimization matters, and then there's still some, hard-coded cheats in there, that's probably going to get some negative view in our eyes, and they're not getting the 40 out of 40 points for that technical implementation. Now, if you say like, hey, I've mocked out X, Y, and Z because I want you to focus on this, we're totally understanding of that, right? We don't necessarily need this to be a polished project up and down the stack. This can be, focused in on one particular technical element. And part of that storytelling is going, about kind of that base level thing of, as you pitch your project, you have a very thorough README that documents exactly what you did, how you did it, what we should be judging you on. The more that you can kind of tailor that, the more that we can go in and independently verify. That is another thing that I want to highlight and underline, because even if you can't just submit screenshots and give us a spreadsheet and we say, oh, great, that's good. Whatever you're doing needs to be able to be verified. So I think there's even wording and language that, like in the mobile track, you don't necessarily strictly required to submit source code. But I want to highlight the caveat there of like, that means like if you've customized the model, we don't necessarily need you to open source that model, but we do need to be able to independently verify what you did and be able to run it ourselves technically. So if we have trouble doing that, or if we do that and we don't get the same results that you're reporting, that's also where you're not necessarily going to get the 40 out of the 40 technical implementation. So that matters the most. I also want to highlight too that if you did something and it's not that technically impressive, it's not that innovative, it's a thing that a ton of people have done before, that doesn't mean that it's not a good project. Even if it doesn't get the 40 out of 40, there's a lot of other criteria that you can get very high results in and you might be very good at, and we might find overall that is the winning project. But also, even if it's something that is not new and innovative, if you've done something that will it is technically interesting and it was in depth and it does work, you will get high marks in this category. We're not looking for a PhD thesis here, right? We're looking for what you submit as something that is cool and interesting. Michael Gay, anything I forget for technological implementation?
Well, I just wanted to add that while of course we're not judging on like the how beautiful the code is or anything, it's like it's understood that this is a hack and it's supposed to be proof of concept thrown together quickly. We do read through the code. Like I can say for certain from the last hackathon, some of the projects that were really well or were like fit the criteria really well didn't have the best code, and then there was a lot of projects as well that well, the code was purely just print statements. And so it's like we do actually go through it and look at it, but I don't want you to feel self-conscious about the quality of the code as long as we can read through it and see, oh, it's actually doing what they say it's supposed to be doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And just going back to what Avin said about, it doesn't have to be a mind-blowing technical implementation. It doesn't have to be like PhD thesis level stuff. If it's even just as simple as you took an image generation model that used to run on a big GPU, and now it will run on just CPU in the cloud or run on a mobile phone locally. That's a big improvement. That's the kind of optimizations that we're looking for here is what is going to open up new use cases that didn't exist before.
Yeah, even if it's something that exists before, but maybe it's making it easier, even if it's just easier for you. That's the kind of thing that we want to see. And I think that kind of goes into I'm gonna skip around a bit in its order, and let's talk about potential impact because I think it goes along very well when talking about the technological implementation. This category is how much impact could this code have? Part of this is that the code submitted is open source, and one of our intents of that is that we're trying to uplift all of the ARM developer community and help other people understand these optimizations. And we want not just the judges to be able to re-implement your thing, but people to understand, oh, hey, I could be thinking about that. I could do an optimization like that before. And so if your project is a tool that a bunch of developers are going to use, right? Even if it's maybe a minor thing and very minor tweak, but if I'm going to recommend it to every developer in the future, that's 20 out of 20 on impact right there, right? If it's something that is useful as a template to start thing, or I can say like, hey, I want to do an optimization thing. I can tell my AI agent of, hey, I want to do an optimization like this project did. Here's the repo. Go figure out what they did and implement it in mine. Those are things, if your repo is built in such a way to facilitate that, that's going to help that impact score. And part of that does involve the documentation, maybe even, an agent's file that kind of explains the different aspects of the code and how to use it so an agent can come through and figure that out, that implementation. Again, that's not a strictly required you have to do that, but just kind of spitballing ideas of the kinds of things that those little polishes things, those things that are going to make this repo useful after the hackathon, right? If it's the kind of thing that someone will look at it, be like, great, and you and no one else will ever look at it again, that's the kind of thing that'll get a low score in this potential impact category. It's only 20 out of the 100 points, but I would say that, if you really do something that is really outstanding in this category, it's going to be very favored by the judges for sure. This is definitely something we're going to have in mind as we look through the projects and like it. And likewise, it is not the most important thing. So if your project is something where it's not going to have that impact, don't feel scared about that because, again, it just means you got to make it really good in the other categories and it'll be a good project that we may potentially pick as a winner.
And when we talk about code, we're not just talking about applications. Like, we're not looking for a bunch of new apps necessarily. If you've got just a script or a process for pruning a large model to fit a smaller device, that is going to have a huge impact because that's something anybody could use to target a specific device with a model that doesn't currently run on that device. So that would be huge, even if it's just like a bash script that pulls together a bunch of tools to do the job. That would also lend itself to, the whole developer experience. People can make this just part of their process. And again, it's going to impact a lot more applications that way than if you produced your own app that's got a model in it. So think broadly about, how can this be impactful to other developers? How can this help improve other applications beyond just your own?
And then the next category we'll talk about is user experience slash developer experience. This is that fit and polish category that, a base level. I think all our projects are going to require a bit of it. That again, if we cannot judge you, we cannot understand, we cannot run your project, that's going to be an issue. But if you make that process really easy for us, if it is really thoroughly documented, the code is not like AI spaghetti, but it's actually parsable and readable, and the files are understandable of what each element does, and it makes our lives easier in like figuring out how to use it and or the process of running your app itself is a really good experience for the end user, even if the judges aren't the intended end user of that. This is where that polish category does matter, right? It might be the smallest in terms of point wise, only 15 out of 100, but this is still absolutely a very important metric that putting in that extra mile will highlight your project above the others. And so it's worth making sure that you're not just putting out there, code and having us figure it out, but you're actually taking the time for us to really explore it and make that experience. You're thinking about how someone's going to interact with this. It's very much related to that impact, right? I think having a good UX helps increase your impact, much like having a very good technological implementation increases your impact. These categories will be interwoven in that way. But just as a guideline in terms of how we're weighting it, we wanted to make sure that this was its own separate category so that we can reward the projects that do this really well, and highlight the importance of why everyone should care about this.
I will add that I know it's very easy to fall into like it works on my machine syndrome. Like if you're a developer, you have all these tools and libraries already installed, and you're not always aware of what's actually required um, to follow the exact same path that you are giving us. So we will make a good faith effort to get it running on our own and then reach out and contact you. So if there's something missing, it's not the end of the world. We will like ask, hey, did you have anything else installed on your machine, or do whatever we can. So I just wanted to add that because we encountered that last time quite a bit as well, and um, been there, done that.
Yeah, we can't guarantee that you're going to get messages from us, but make sure your contact information is updated because if you're getting a message from us, that is a good sign that we're interested in hearing more about you because we can't promise that if we can't get it working, we're going to do that debugging. So you should make sure it's as independently as possible. But if for some reason we have an issue and can't get it work, we're not just going to be like technicality, like, nope, wait, I couldn't do it independently. This whole project is out. We might make some effort to see if like, hey, we think there's this one missing thing. Um,
Yeah, especially if the you have a high score on like the wow factor or potential impact. Like the higher the other scores are, the more effort will probably go to get it running. Because obviously, if it's a spectacular project on paper and it seems like it should be working, and so there's just something not quite right, yeah, it makes sense that we would go through the extra effort to get it running.
I will say though, make sure that what you submitted is everything that's needed to run. We had a lot of projects last time where there was like a README file and a couple of supporting code files, but it looked like there was a large chunk of the application that just never got added to that Git repo. So don't trust that everything on your local machine is in that repo. Start a fresh, development environment. Pull what's in the repo. Make sure everything that is needed is in there.
For sure, for sure. Especially, things like which Python packages, right? We don't want to have to be hunting down like, oh, this is missing. Okay, I need to install this. Oh, this is missing, right? Think about those types of requirements and lists as you're pulling things together. And as Michael said, the best thing is to start on a fresh computer, a fresh developer environment, pull it down, kind of simulate how we'll do as judges. That said, too, if there are things that you would need to pull in that you can't include in your open source repo, like if you need to have, say, pulling in another project, a great example of this might be you're using the Unreal Engine. You don't need to ship the Unreal Engine as part of your project. It is reasonable for you to put it as a requirement. Hey, this runs the Unreal Engine. Just make sure that is, very clearly listed to the judges so the judges know that we need to download and use that. Um, Different tools have different licenses, and so like I cannot 100% guarantee that no matter what extra tool you have offer, we're going to have that on hand, especially when we're talking some of the physical AI things that you might be using some kind of physical robot that we don't, have access to. The more that you can make it work for us, the more you can, figure out what's needed or even what could be substituted if there's, a different type of physical device that could be used instead that would be a similar result. We'll work with you and figure that out. Again, we want you to like we want to be less prescriptive of it needs to meet this criteria, and we're a little bit more open for you of pitch us, convince us on why we could do it, and
Yeah.
we're willing to use a lot of different tools to make sure that your projects work. We'll have it as long as we can get it replicated in some way on our development machine. Things like, yeah, we can download Unreal, no problem. Some other open source package, almost surely no problem, right? If that package is like no one can ever touch this thing or whatever, there might be some legal question, but that's pretty rare. I just want to make sure that I'm being like legally, thorough there when in talking about those details. But as a general statement, it will not be an issue if you, just talk to us like you would any other developer trying to get set up with your process.
And that comes back to potential impact, right? Like something that optimizes code for a game using Unreal Engine has a big potential impact. If it's like requiring this one weird niche proprietary software package that costs $10,000 and has like 10 customers, that's going to have a very small potential impact in the industry. So, like, just something to consider. We'd never really seen much that had like requirements that were hard to come by. So, I'm not too worried about that, but just, you know, something to keep in mind that the more accessible your dependency chain is to a broad audience, the more likely you're going to score well on that potential impact.
And for some of the robotics things, we may be able to get access to them. Like it's a big company, we can reach out. And odds are, if it's mainstream, someone has one that we can get a little bit of time on. But that being said, if there's any like simulators or things that are known for whatever you're running on, just make sure to point that out. It's like, hey, I wrote it for this piece of hardware that I have, but you can emulate it in this software, this simulator.
So that actually kind of leads us into a question that we had in the chat. If we want to go ahead and jump into that.
I was
Um,
just gonna ask.
Actually,
Yeah.
I just want to real quick go over the wow factor, just so we're done with the criteria, and then we can jump into that one because I think we were
Sure.
touching on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But wow factor is probably one of the most self-explanatory. Um, is your project remarkable? Literally. After I go through it and I get on a call with Gabe and Michael and they say, "Hey, did you see any neat projects?" If I want to talk about your project there, that's wow factor. With something that is compelling. It's got an interesting story. It does something good. It does something particularly well. It stands out in a useful way. It's a bit of a catch-all category of it's not defined by one particular metric in terms of its technological, its impact, its UX, but it has something that is going to be interesting. Maybe it's something that if I saw it across the room, I would be interested in learning more about it. Maybe it's something that the more I dive into it, the more it's like, wow, this is really compelling and interesting. It's the storytelling for your project, and I don't just mean the quality of how you tell its story. I mean the quality of how we as judges understand that story. So again, you don't have to be a professional presenter who has, the green screen and everything in your video and make like the perfect thing for it to be a wow factor. If your project is that kind of cool thing that then I want to get on a video and talk with you about it and share it with people, that's what we're looking for max wow factor points. And that's also why it is the second biggest on the points criteria, right? This is where, hey, maybe you don't have the most technologically advanced thing. Maybe your UX experience has a few hiccups, but if you're something that I wanted to like, oh man, there was this project, it did this, or this developer did that, that's the wow factor. That's going to matter a lot in the final scoring.
And we're all developers. We've got other judges from inside ARM who are engineers. So like we will understand the technical wow factor if it's there.
Amazing. Let's get into some questions. We have one question in the chat, and then we also have someone asking about their project. So we'll do the question first. In your experience as judges, what is the biggest mistake that strong AI projects make that prevents them from becoming winning submissions?
Oh, good question. I think that people can get really muddied in like requirements versus like what's actually the factor, right? I think the reason that we formatted this today as talking about this criteria is that um, we're less interested in you pitching us your startup, right? Like you might have a project that like, oh man, I could see 1 million people will want to download this, and probably other hackathons like that's the most exciting win criteria. But we just went through our judging criteria for this, and while that project might have impact or wow factor, it might not be the thing that we're looking for the most in that optimization point of view. So I would be really like thinking about what you're doing that makes this project optimized for an ARM chipset in some way. Again, we're vague about what that could mean, but I think the biggest mistake that I might have seen some early submissions make is not kind of focusing on that aspect of the story. You know, like it's no secret we work for ARM. We're hosting this for a reason. We want you to actually think about your technological architecture and want you to think about, you know, how you're going to optimize for ARM chipsets in your projects, not just in this hackathon in the future. I certainly hope so. But that's the thing that's going to matter first and foremost to us, rather than if we think your startup is going to download 1 million apps.
I have another thing. I wouldn't say it's the biggest, but it was very common where you would get people the last project where they would entirely vibe code the project and just upload it to Git without verifying anything. And so you would get, of course, code where it hallucinated or hard-coded results, or it was missing big chunks of files. Like there's nothing wrong with using AI to assist with what you're doing. In fact, we encourage it, but definitely verify the results and um, kind of guide it and not just so much vibe code it, because otherwise you'll be beaten out by people who did put in the effort.
And I'll add for this specific challenge, we really are looking for that optimization element. Right now, even in the broader AI, industry, resource constraints are a very real problem for us right now, from the cloud to devices to physical stuff. There's not really a lack of creative ideas for apps that use AI, but we are running up against the limits of what you can do with what's currently out there. So the whole reason we did this challenge is to open up more doorways by focusing on making things run faster, making things run smaller, making things run better or with more features within that resource constraint limits. So whatever your app is, think about what am I doing that is an optimization? What am I doing that has made things more efficient or faster? And that's going to be your selling point for this challenge. Like Avin said, we had a challenge where, the impact of the app on like your community or an industry, that was important. In this one, it's specifically we're looking for that optimizations.
Excellent. All right. I'm going to reshare my screen because Benedict put his project idea within the chat. And so I reshared to put it in a Google Doc so we could all see it. All right. So the project idea, hello, this is our project ICARUS. We are building a system that uses sensor data to detect ventilation faults in multi-zone habitats early, such as failing fans, blocked airflow, or frozen sensor. The AI model identifies the fault from the data, and based off of that, certain actions will be taken during the simulation. We want to make the model run efficiently on ARM hardware. Should our main focus be optimizing the AI model itself, for example, making it smaller, using INT8 quantization, or optimizing how it runs on ARM hardware, such as the runtime, threads, or ARM-specific acceleration? Which approach would you recommend matching? Which would be best matching the judging criteria? We'll start there because there are like multiple parts to this.
Yeah, I think so from a what qualifies element, the answer is yes, right? Like either way, absolutely, I think that would count as an ARM optimization. Now, from a what's going to get you the highest score result? What are we going to be most impressed by? I think that goes back earlier that you don't have to be reinventing the wheel, right? If you're doing some quantization that's appropriate for the type of hardware you're running, I assume for an application like this, you might be doing something in a tiny edge device, maybe a Raspberry Pi type thing. There's probably some optimizations and focus you can kind of focus in on that runtime. But I would say that if you're making it appropriate for that, tinier microcontroller hardware, you're doing the optimizations to, run that inference at the edge. It sounds like, not just putting it to the cloud. Or if you are putting it to cloud, you're doing so and you're collecting that data and you're in a very efficient way. And maybe you got some kind of local Kubernetes node having the OTel collector connect up to the cloud and running through the models. Like there's some pitch there that makes it an AI optimization that I imagine there's a lot of different directions you can go. And again, it doesn't have to be like this is the most efficient anyone has ever implemented this process. It can be something that can be quote unquote standard and get very high technical marks if it's something that is done well, implemented well, documented well, and you're actually doing the optimization for it. You didn't just like you know download a model and run it and like, hey, it happened to run on ARM.
Yeah, quantization is one of those really easy wins for optimizing AI models. Everybody should be considering quantization of their models, I would say. There is still room there for some wow factor. There are newer quantization formats that you could do that nobody's ever done for a particular model before. You can have something that, you know, inspects a target device and figures out what the best level of quantization is for that specific device and tailors your model to that. Those kinds of things will introduce the wow factor on top of just, the known benefit of quantization. Um, Optimizing for the runtimes, like looking at are you using, a version of, say, Executorch that uses ARM's Kleidi AI library, which is going to take advantage of all of our matrix extensions. That's a good thing. Improve an application by using the correct version of a framework for the device you're targeting is a good example of a technical optimization that we would be looking for.
Yeah, and there's so many different like styles of quantization too. It's not just as simple as saying, okay, everyone is just gonna quantize down to the lowest bit they like the lowest that they can and still have it functional. Like things like quantization aware training or various other methods can very much apply and set you apart, even though at the end you're just doing some form of quantization.
All right.
And
I
I
hope
think
that
they'll go to
answers.
the second
Yeah, go
part of the
ahead.
question, right? Is
Mm.
basically like how do we evaluate this? Can we emulate it? And I especially think in type of factory system right here, doing a simulation is great. That's a great way for us to be able to spin up and look at it. And we understand that you'll get different results. Emulating it versus on hardware, right? You might not the benchmarks might not show it. This is where you can feel safe and assured that the people who are going to be judging it are very deep technical people. It's primarily going to be the three of us. We also have some other engineers within ARM that are going to help us out. We're actually not getting any community judges for our project. I know there's been some people like emailing to ask to volunteer that. We're specifically not doing that in part that we are making sure that the people who are judging these submissions are deeply technical and deeply understand the code. So if you show us in something that here's a virtual simulation to show that this code works and it does a thing, and then we can look at and see how there's an optimization going in there, even if we're not able to, simulate the exact results through that virtualization, that is totally fine, right? We're smart enough to be able to parse and know an optimization is happening. We're not judging it by, the best benchmark percentage wins. So I think I would highly encourage you that if you make it simple for us, great. That said, don't feel like it's strictly required in the way that if you need us to have three Raspberry Pi devices, let me tell you, that's very realistic that we're going to be able to muster this up and be able to run a
Yeah.
test.
Yeah.
You know,
Again, we're ARM. We're privileged to have access to a large number of ARM-powered devices in a variety of form factors. So even if you don't have the hardware, if we have it, we're going to try and run your software directly on that.
All right. I think that's good. Getting into the next project from Baylor. And Baylor, if you want to come on mic, let me know, raise your hand. You can explain further, but essentially what they put in the chat, optimizing a body pose model suite for a multicam setup on Jetson, optimizing for frame rate, actively building, blocker, what counts as ARM optimization versus NVIDIA optimization on Jetson. So Baylor, you said you're down to come on. So I see you raising your hand. I'm going to let you up. If I can figure out how to do that again.
And
There we go.
while you're doing that, I can give the really short answer is if the optimizations are purely CUDA operation optimizations, then that's something we wouldn't really be counting. Um, but there's so much more that goes into AI operations than just the pure on a like an Orin. That's not just pure CUDA. Like anything that's dealing with the actual orchestration of the software or anything like that um, can be counted as or for this challenge.
yeah, even if it is like not the biggest part of it, but if you're using something like a DGX Spark, those have a lot of ARM Cortex-M chips on it. There's a lot of ARM in that, and so it is okay if there's a bunch of NVIDIA optimizations there, and the CPU is supporting that GPU optimization. But if you're doing something that involves the CPU and some of it's if it, as Gabe said, it's just purely GPU, the CPU, you're not doing anything that matters in that level, it's not going to count. But if you're doing something at the CPU, even if that CPU is playing a supporting role to the work on the GPU, that absolutely counts. It's exactly what we're here for. That's exactly the kind of stuff that we would want to see.
And even
Nice.
stuff that's not necessarily CPU itself, but like if you're doing something that takes advantage of unified memory on like a Spark or a Grace Blackwell system, that's going to count because that's part of the whole CPU GPU combination there.
All right, we've got Baylor on the mic. Baylor, if you want to, yeah, talk about your project a little bit more.
Yeah, hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I missed a couple sentences because Zoom made me rejoin as a presenter or
Oh,
something,
sorry
but
about that.
I think I got most of it. Yeah, the interesting. Have you guys heard or know what Deep Stream is from NVIDIA? The
I have heard of it, but I'm not very familiar with it. Can you give us like the 10
yeah,
second pitch?
the 10-second version of it is it's basically trying to run the GPU and all the computer vision pipeline on the GPU without ever leaving it.
Hmm.
But basically, what we're trying to do is instead of doing that, using the CPU in conjunction with the GPU, so that way we can pipeline it into a multi-stage pipeline. Because the computer vision model I'm using has two different models, so you can run them at the same time of different frames to kind of stage the pipelines. And so that's
Hmm.
kind of what we're building. So it kind of like reintroduces the CPU as adding performance rather than trying to escape the CPU. And we've already seen like drastic increases in performance from it. Um, so
Yeah,
that's kind of what.
your project sounds right up our alley. That sounds great. I would love to dive into that and check it out.
Yeah, cool. That was kind of my question. So
Great.
that's
I want
all.
to give an extra shout out to you in particular for being the first person to come off the mic and talk. We're very friendly. I want to encourage everybody if you want to come talk with us, we are happy to talk and support you. That sounds like a really cool, interesting project. It sounds like you totally understand the criteria of what we're talking about. Of it not just that there's an ARM CPU somewhere in the stack, but you're doing the optimization involves the ARM CPU in some way or utilizing the ARM CPU to make that optimization happen. And yeah, that scale case of being able to make it, be able to scale even more, have multi-camera systems, be able to simultaneous that. These are absolutely the kinds of stories that we would love to see in this hackathon. That definitely is a project that I'm going to be excited to look through.
Yeah, I mean the way you put it, that you by putting more work on the CPU, you increase the performance of the overall system. That's a great story for us.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Baylor. Appreciate it. I'm going to put you back as attendee now, but thank you so much for being number one. Excellent. Oh, you already did. Excellent. All
And for
right, moving
anybody who
on.
doesn't want
Yeah.
to come on like microphone, totally understand. Chat in the chat. We will answer your questions there.
Awesome. I have Juan now, and Juan, let me know. Just raise your hand if you want to come on mic. But I'll read what you put in the chat. So you said we are building an AI platform that creates specialized digital employees for real businesses. From a judging perspective, what carries more weight? Technical innovation, production readiness, or demonstrated real-world business impact?
I think the judging criteria is very clear on that. Technical innovation, that technical implementation, that's going to matter the most. It's not that the other ones don't, but we're going to definitely weight that of those three. I would say that technical innovation part, the actual what you're doing with the tech. Um, and then I would also say that for both production readiness, it will lead into real world impact as well as a technically can lead into real world impact. But that real world impact would be the second most priority, right? That's I guess technically it's wow factor in the judging criteria, but I think part of that is the more you optimize you are in those other categories, the more impact you're going to have in that. So I would guide you towards thinking first about the technical and then thinking more of can this be impactful in the real world, even if it's not production ready, but is this something that is something someone will realistically actually use?
Yeah, I would say production readiness is probably the lowest thing on our criteria list. We're not looking for stuff that's, ready to go into market. We're looking for potential more than anything.
Yeah, definitely don't want to turn away anyone who's doing a really hack together proof of concept and thinking, oh, it's not worth submitting because it's not polished and it's not production ready. Yeah,
Yeah, don't worry about having a full test suite. Don't worry about having, the ability to scale to millions already baked in. We're all engineers. We can tell from a prototype what the potential is there for growth and for impact.
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Juan, for putting in your project. These are some really great insights. I'm glad we're doing this. Next, we have Damon. And Damon, if you want to come off mic and explain more about your project, let me know. Just raise your hand, but I'll read off what you put off in the chat. So Damon says, hello, I'm working on a project called VFU, hopefully I said it right, which is a small, fast, stateful, and portable runtime for agents. It is a flexible runtime that can be embedded into any ARM devices. Now it mainly creates, manage, trace on-device agents. May I know if what are the optimization points if you're looking not only from the existing runtime feature?
I guess in something like this, it would be what does it do differently or how is it innovative versus other similar solutions that are already out there? Um, I guess I would need a little bit more details to give a strong answer. Michael and Avon, if you have a better answer than that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
get.
I would say, oh, go ahead, Avin.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So like agentic runtimes are a really big growing thing right now, and it's also a very new area for software. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here for optimizations. There are things like OpenClaw already out there, but they're rather big and do a lot, and you wouldn't necessarily put those on a small embedded smart device. So I think, optimizations like you're talking about, where you're making an agentic runtime that can run on very resource constrained devices, does have a lot of potential. There's a potential for a lot of wow factor there. So that's where I would focus on is, what are you comparing to? Are you comparing to like an OpenClaw or something like that? What are you able to do, or what devices are you able to support that those do not? Those are the optimization stories there that I would focus on.
Yeah, plus one to everything Michael just said. I was going to say, like, think about what is the alternative approach that a developer would have to do if they didn't have your project and compare it to that. Like, oh, well, instead of doing this, now you have this, and that is more optimized because of X, Y, and Z reasons. It's lighter weight, you can scale on a smaller device. You have some story about why that is optimized, right? You don't just have to think about there's different ways to do what you're doing, and yours is the most optimized way. You can, in some ways compare it to maybe a little bit of a straw man argument, as long as it's realistic of here's an old way to do it, and I'm doing it this way. Pitching it as you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't have to be no one else has ever implemented it. It could be your way that you're doing that optimization. That is fine. You don't, we're not going to knock you points if there's someone else who's done an optimization better for you, with the caveat that if you're doing something that is like, wait, OpenClaw is just objectively better at this in every single way and metric. It has the adoption. Why would we do this over that? That might, again, you might be a project that has a lot of different judging criteria. You could get good marks on all sorts of things, but your impact would be very low then if it's something like, well, actually there's another like industry standard solution that people would just go towards. But even if yours is, well, most people might do this, but then these people in this scenario will like mine because it's tailored for just this scenario. That's great. We take that pitch. The more narrow you make that, as Michael brought up earlier, if this is something that's going to help, one company, three people, that'll affect your impact score. But if you give us that pitch on why like it's really important to those people and why that logic is great, why this project can build up, that can very much increase your impact, and certainly you can get full marks on the technical implementation.
I would also say look at the developer experience angle too, because if you make this just like a real simple drop-in library and API for Java or Objective-C to make it real easy for somebody to just, put this in an app, that could score you a lot of points there too.
Okay, I was literally mid-typing, so this is perfect. Nice segue to probably our last one. And this is kind of like final call for anyone else. So if anyone else wants to talk, definitely add your project to the chat. Otherwise, Frank is going to be our last one. So Frank's project is a browser-based algebra tutor running a 1 KB ONNX neural network entirely on device. Pretty far along, their blocker is establishing a fair baseline when there's no server round trip to compare against. So that's their project. And Frank, if you want to explain further, let me know and I can bring you up on stage.
I think this is kind of goes exactly to what I was talking about, right? In terms of, what is the quote unquote fair baseline to judge from if it's you're doing something unique and interesting. It's like, wait, if this other thing would be apples to oranges, so you can't quite, compare them. This is where I want to emphasize that that technical implementation points is not going to be based on the metric. Hey, if you got a thing and you show like without my optimization, this number, with it this number, and there's a big improvement, that'll look great, but that's not strictly required to get the full judging marks for a technical implementation. If you're doing something that is apples to oranges different, that is also really exciting for us. It doesn't necessarily need to have that the baseline comparison of like, oh, there's this other thing. If you're doing something novel and interesting and really, really tiny, and you're like, wait, this 1 kilobyte, this could run on a Furby or something, like you can push what we're thinking about is possible, and what even that means to optimize what is capable in a category. That's going to get really, really exciting for us. That said, if you are looking for how do I describe this in numbers, um, it's
It's
even
a
fair
webinar
to,
I'm taking part of.
oh yes, sorry,
Oh,
go ahead,
hey,
Frank.
Frank.
Talk
Yeah,
to us
you're
directly.
unmuted, Frank.
Uh, hi, hi guys.
Hey.
Uh, yeah, my project, Aristotle was basically an idea of a Socratic teacher that could have an AI built along with it as like a verifier checker. And the thing is, the AI was so small that it doesn't make sense to quantize.
Hmm. So what I would say is look at what the potential impact of this is. So it sounds like you've made a custom model or maybe have a custom ONNX runtime or something that is
Mhm.
exceptionally small. How can you make that something that developers can do for their own projects, even if it's a different kind of model or a different data set that's going into training that model? If it's a repeatable process to make these small, efficient models for other data sets and other use cases, then there's your big impact story there.
And I want to add that we're ARM. We know the value of running something locally versus in the cloud when it comes to AI. So you don't have to sell us on that story. If a big part of it is I optimize this so you can run it local, where traditionally you would have to do it in the cloud on a big server instance, it's like you can point that out, but we know, like we get it. So if that's a big part of your story, then that's fine, and we would understand the impact of that.
And along those lines too of everything that they said, and wow factor is judged by technical people, as we've been emphasizing. So if the technical wow factor is, hey, it's doing a thing, and look how microscopically tiny it is that I'm accomplishing this result, right? Like, frankly, even if it's super impractical, if it is something that I'm excited to talk about, like, look how tiny that was crammed into, that's going to get good marks in the wow factor.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Frank, for coming on stage. All right,
Well,
that
it
is
sure
a
sounds like we're
wrap.
going to have some really good, really interesting submissions
Oh,
for this
yeah.
challenge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm really excited hearing about these.
People really showed up. I really appreciate like extra special thanks to everyone who like talked about their project and got vulnerable, but also everyone here who was just listening in. I'm so glad that you took the time to talk with us. A number one things I want to emphasize to you is submit. If you're feeling like a little bit of imposter syndrome, you're feeling like, oh, maybe my project's not as cool. I promise you, you're probably doing something cool and interesting, and for sure, I want to see it. So I hope everyone here does a submission. And while we might be wrapping up this Q&A, I want to also emphasize that we are doing another one on an ARM Discord on Monday, as well as you can just post into the discussions tab anytime, any questions, reach out to us by email, however, reach out to us on our Discords. However you want to contact us about that, we are here to help you with your submissions. If you have any technical challenges or hurdles, we want to hear about it, help you out as best we can with it. So do not feel like you're alone. You're part of this community. So thank you so much for taking the time and being here today.
Thank you all, everyone. I hope this was a great session for you all. And if it was, and it was super beneficial, we hope to do more of these in the future. I want to thank the ARM team so much for allowing me to pitch this kind of session. This
Well,
was
thank
so
you,
much
Darley.
better than
Yeah,
I'm so
thanks for having
glad.
us on.
Oh yeah, this was
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, this is so much better than I think we could have ever hoped. And so I'm super proud of everyone who attended and yeah, join the Discord, join our Discord, also join the ARM Discord as well. Get your questions answered, but also communicate, commune with your fellow devs. Like this is a really great time, really exciting time to see what everyone's building and help each other out and just kind of encourage each other. So just a reminder, the submission deadline is August 14th. So if you are not registered, register today. And if you are registered, you have till August 14th. So
Mhm.
that will be all. And yeah, have a great
Note
rest
that
of your
time
day.
zone too. It's not,
Oh, yeah.
midnight your time. It is 7 p.m. Eastern,
Yes,
4 p.m.
definitely.
Pacific. I would just submit on the 13th, like
Yeah.
there's people from all over the world in this call. Time zones can be challenging. And I think we are not going to be able to take late submissions on this. So,
Mhm.
it's open right now. Submit now, submit early, submit often.
Yeah, you can keep updating your project up until that deadline. So you can submit today and then keep working on it and keep pushing those updates out. That way you know that you can't miss the deadline. You're always going to have something there.
Yeah, I would highly recommend submitting early. You can keep editing it up until the day. And just pay special attention to your submission requirements. Make sure you're super covered on what you need to submit. Just go through this, use it as a checklist, use
Yes.
whatever
Make sure
AI
you've got that
tools are
license file
doing.
in there. We had a lot last
Oh,
time
yeah.
that forgot the license file. We
Hmm.
did, try and go back and get them to submit that. Not everybody responded to that request. So yeah,
Mm.
just make sure you double check that one.
Yeah, we don't want an excellent submission to have to not be eligible by a technicality like that for a missing README missing submission file. As Gabe mentioned, we had a couple projects that just didn't include their entire code base.
Mhm.
Like make sure
Wow.
you're you know double checking that repo before you submit it. Don't trust your agent with it. Take a time, review it as a human.
All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. Yeah, that's kind of what you need to know. But this has been recorded. I think this is good enough to upload, honestly, but we'll share this recording with everyone who registered, as well as I'll kind of create a document of everything that was said and tips and tricks if anyone wants to refer back to anything that was discussed today and apply it to their own projects. None of this advice was specifically and only just for these projects. A lot can be applied for whatever. Can we download the transcript? I will provide you the notes. I can do that. But I want to say thank you all so much. And that is a wrap. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you, Darlise. Thank you, Devpost.
Thank you, everybody.